And permit me to acknowledge the next Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, Attorney at Law, Mr. Randall Mitchell. Party Field Officer, Mr. Indar Parasram. And of course, always present, giving us 100% support, Your Worship, the Mayor of San Fernando, Alderman Kazim Hussein. And permit me to make the special acknowledgement of the family of Neil Mohammed, who is behind him 1,000%. Because those of us who are involved in the political arena, we know when all is said and done, all you have left is your family. And I'm very pleased to see Mrs. Mohammed here and the rest of Neil's family tonight, giving him that support and sustenance that he needs. Party members, supporters, well-wishers gathered here in this hall, and those of you who are your tens and hundreds of thousands listening at home, this is a PNM forum and could easily be a forum of national education. Ladies and gentlemen, the tale of two parties and two governments. One is in the UK and one is in Trinidad and Tobago. In May of 2010, there was an election in the United Kingdom, and a coalition government was formed there. In that very said month, there was an election in Trinidad and Tobago, and a UNC government and a few appendages got into office. But these two political organizations had something in common. Coming into office, the UK parties, the Conservative and the Liberal, said that they will change the system of calling elections by putting in place arrangements for fixed election date so that the population will know when elections are due, and there will be no game playing about election date in back pocket and fobs and brassiere and other parts of your person. That same commitment was made in Trinidad and Tobago. In the UK, those who got into office on that commitment took steps to ensure that that was done. And they have put in place arrangements so that the British people knew when the election was, and the first election being held under those arrangements are now due on the 7th of May, approximately 5 years from the day of coming into office. Two things here. One, they kept their promise. They did what they had to do, and the fixed election date system is in place. They also knew that they were elected for 5 years and did not go seeking loopholes or arrangements in the law to get 5 years plus 3 months or 5 years plus 10 months. In Trinidad and Tobago, the government has done absolutely nothing about that commitment, and the Prime Minister is playing games with the election date just like previous Prime Ministers or worse. And therein lies the difference. Therein lies the difference between those who make commitments and keep them. But I must tell you, it is not because you, the people in Trinidad and Tobago, did not pay for the arrangements for the new election date. You paid approximately $20 million for consultation on the question of reform of the Constitution. That exercise was led by one Prakash Ramadar. And at the end of the day, The Parliament met during the vacation of 2014, night and day to reform the Constitution, and absolutely nothing came out of it. Your $20 million went down the drain. Because the one thing they focused on was a runoff, because they thought it was good for their political party to be used for the election. They got a change of mind along the way, and they just tossed the whole thing aside. So the elections are due anyway. As it stands now, based on the behavior of the Prime Minister, it is clear that she does not intend to call any election in the context of having served 5 years in a 5-year term. It appears as though she wants 5 years plus. But let me tell her something. She was elected for 5 years. On the 24th of May, that'll be 5 years. Because she took control of this country on the 25th of May, and the Parliament first met on the 16th of June. Well, on the 24th of May, we, the PNM, will meet at Nelson Mandela Park, formerly called King George V Park, for a family day. And on that day, we'll be launching the Get Out campaign. 5 years would have gone, and you get out of office. Get out, get out. So I'm inviting all of Trinidad and Tobago, all ye that have laden, carrying the burden of this government's abuse for 5 years. On the 24th of May, you will exhale, and they will be invited to get out. So I see you in Nelson Mandela Park expressing yourself to the Prime Minister who doesn't know when to leave. It's always an unwelcome guest that doesn't know when to leave. But I tell you, in preparation for the elections, we have been screening our candidates. And tonight I can report to you that we have settled on 40 of the 41 candidates. And in the next week or two or whenever, we'll settle number 41, and that would have been the end of the screening process. But in preparation for office, I led the team of PNM candidates to Otinola in Maracas St. Joseph for a retreat, so as to lay out to them what being a PNM representative means, to make clear to them what they are embarking upon. And one of the things I told them was that the current Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago is not functioning efficiently or effectively. And we intend to change that when we come into office. And I told them that the reason for that inefficiency and ineffectiveness is that persons who are not in the cabinet are viewed as part-time members of the Parliament. Whether you are a government backbencher or you are an opposition member, you are viewed as a part-time person. Meaning that you don't give all of your time to the service of the people by way of the Parliament. And because they pay you such measly sums, you have to go out and work somewhere else to mind your family. So instead of being in the Parliament, doing what has to be done so that the people's interests can be best served, you spend some time in the Parliament and other times elsewhere in your private business. Now that might have been okay 25 or 30 years ago, or even 15 years ago, when there was a smaller budget, there was less money being spent, there were fewer state enterprises, and there were less issues to be attended to. Today, I'm sure some of you could cast your mind back to when the first budget in Trinidad and Tobago was $1 billion. And then it went to $3 billion. Then it went to $5 billion. Then it went to $15 billion. Then $23 billion. And then $30-odd billion. In the height of the boom, $30-odd billion. And there were complaints that the government was spending too much money. And those who were complaining about that got themselves into office. And they brought 5 budgets. And the average size of one of those budgets is $60 billion. But the same arrangements for monitoring, for overseeing, for accountability, it is the same arrangements in place. And that suits them fine. Because in an arrangement like that, there is no way that part-time members of parliament could properly oversee those budgets. And if you want to know what happens when you don't properly oversee those expenditures, look at the people who have been managing the affairs, and you will see government ministers who came into office looking like Miss Howard Chat. But today, they are multimillionaires with more property than you could believe. Some of them spent 15 years building a house. Within 9 months of coming into office, the house turned into a palace. Contractors who were mixing their own mortar on a Sunday evening today are billionaires. Because the budgets put into the system every 12 months, tens of billions of dollars. And because those monies have not been properly supervised, you even have permanent secretaries now taking a tush. Look at the amount of people who have made scandal stories in this country in the last few years. And all of those scandals have to do with unauthorized access to public resources. And I'm saying to you tonight that until we fix the system in the parliament to bring people accountable for the monies that are allocated to them, this will go on and it will get worse and worse and worse. So, what do? I said in front of the media in Otanola to PNM members that we will make the necessary changes to ensure that persons who are not cabinet ministers are in fact full-time members of parliament. Meaning that you will now not be able to spend your time making a living elsewhere and coming to parliament part-time, and the committees that are supposed to oversee the parliament's business most times cannot have a quorum because members are not available to the parliament. That will have to change. So members who are not already full-time, who are in fact cabinet ministers, those members like opposition members and government backbenchers, they will now be full-time in the parliament. And what that will do, it will allow many more hours of examination and many more instances of reporting on the country's management of its affairs. Now, if you have a job by Bermudez, or you have a job by Ansel McCall, or a job in Al-Rawi's office, and you're a part-time officer, and then they say, no, you are now being converted to full-time, don't you expect to be paid more? And that is all I said. All I said. That because these particular categories of people will now be full-time, their emoluments will have to be adjusted to become in step with them being full-time, but they will now not be able to work for anybody else but the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That was said in front of the media 2 Sundays ago. But the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who has a problem with the truth and who is desperately looking for an election issue and is always looking out for some issue to tarnish Rowley. You know what she said? She called a meeting in one of her Monday night forums. And she said, I went off in a secret meeting and offered a bribe to PNM MPs by way of increased pay rise, and that is a bribe. The Prime Minister wants us to believe that she, as a senior counsel, doesn't understand what I've just explained to you. That part-time members of Parliament will become full-time members of Parliament, and they will be paid as full-time members of Parliament. The Prime Minister thinks that is a bribe. The Prime Minister wants you to believe that she doesn't know what is a bribe. A Prime Minister that led a government that is all about bribes. But she doesn't know what a bribe is. Let me tell you why that is necessary. Let me explain to you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, why it is necessary, in fact imperative, urgent, to get proper parliamentary oversight of what is happening. There are a number of state enterprises, about 50 of them, spending billions of dollars. And it appears as though the only time the people of this country wants to pay attention to how their money is being spent is if you talk about pay rise for members of Parliament. They have no interest in the billions of dollars that are being mishandled elsewhere by persons who you have no control over. The only people you have any control over are the members of Parliament. Because every 5 years they have to come to you and you can vote them in or vote them out of office. At least you have that control. But there are other people spending billions of dollars who are supposed to report to the Parliament who don't even report to the Parliament at all. And even those who report to the Parliament, these reports come in from all over the departments, and if the parliamentary committees meet once a month for 2 hours, so far this year, some of the main committees have met only twice, some have met once, some have not met at all. So the reports that are in the Parliament are just that, reports. They might even come in late, and nobody held accountable. They might come in on time, but there's no time to examine them. So the people who are spending your money, they know that. So they could do what they want with your money, knowing that there is no discovery and no consequences for their actions. And that is why even the very cabinet, the very prime minister, the very minister of finance, these are the top of the pyramid of the management of the country. They too know that the parliament is not functioning, and they want it so. So they could come and tell you that they approve in the parliament budget documents $6 million for live sport. $6 million was the live sport appropriation. The Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance spent $400 million, unbeknownst to the Parliament. It's only when bacchanal breakout and murder and mayhem begin to reign, we knew that there was something called live sport where they were killing people left, right, and center. And a man walked away with $34 million. And when he was asked, what did you do for it? He did not produce a single paper clip. $34 million. And he could say to you, I'm not giving it back. Because if they make me give it back, I go talk. And not one soul in the government or in the parliament has spent 1 minute on that matter. $34 million gone just so. $400 million in live sport gone just so. And these are the people who the Prime Minister is taking issue with me saying that we have to fix this urgently. But that is only one instance, one instance. When this government came into office, they met $1 billion in cash in the accounts of Caribbean Airlines. The airline was healthy, it was lean, it was mean, it was effective, it was efficient. After 2 or 3 board bacchanals, remember those things? The next thing we knew, between the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Transport, the Prime Minister, and the Board of CAL, they fought over what plane to buy. Next thing, they end up buying ATRs. We don't know what happened to the Dash 8, and the $1 billion disappeared. And the Minister of Finance, who is there now, sneaks into the budget $200 million a year to subsidize CAL while pretending it was not so. And there was never a 10 minutes in the Parliament where this matter attracted the attention of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. The opposition raised it, they ignored us, but nobody was held accountable. Well, my understanding is this. I chaired the committee of the Parliament to consider whether parliamentary proceedings should be televised and televised live. And I led that committee. And today, having agreed at committee and agreed in the Parliament, today you have live television coverage of Parliament. And the best action of accountability that we could have in this country is to bring the office holders in front of the Parliament so you could put questions to them, so they could answer in front of you, so you could understand what is happening with your business. But the government doesn't want that. Government doesn't want that. Because if that is in place, where you have parliamentary committees meeting 5 days a week and 6 or 7 hours a day, as the case might be, that nonsense will stop. So you don't want to pay members of parliament to be full-time. It might cost you $1 million or $2. But one contract, improperly awarded, cost you $400 million at the BTAM. One decision, one bad CAL decision, cost you $1 billion. Understand? And let me explain to you how it goes. We now have added in the Parliament a number of other committees, new committees, which are now to function. As of last year, August, those committees are in place and they have begun to function. As opposition leader, I am now on 2 of those committees. I am on the Energy Committee and I'm on the National Security Committee. There's also a Foreign Affairs Committee. And there are a number of other committees which have to be populated by ministers and non-ministers. Now, ministers are very busy running their ministries, and more often than not will not be available for those committees. And more importantly, insofar as ministers are the people on those committees, is himself examining himself. So what you really want to be effective is that those committees really should have a larger number of non-ministers. In a large parliament like the UK, no ministers are on those committees, but you have 400 members in the House. Our parliament is smaller, so you would have to have some ministers, but they shouldn't be in the majority. And in that way, the non-cabinet people could be holding the cabinet accountable. That is what the Constitution says in Section 75. Section 75 of our Constitution says that the country's business shall be run by a cabinet, and the cabinet should be accountable to the Parliament. That is written in law, but it's not in practice. The cabinet is not held accountable by the Parliament. In fact, Many things can slip through the parliament, unbeknownst to non-cabinet members, sometimes only known to a few cabinet members. And in most instances, it involves large sums of money, and in every instance, it involves hurting the public interest. Let me give you an example. I just gave you one there a while ago about live sport. You know all about live sport. You're not seeing any motion of censure about live sport. When a motion of censure came to the parliament on live sport, Mrs. Prasad Bissessa was senior counsel to Anil Roberts. She was his coach and guru in the parliament as he sought to answer for live sport. And when they were both finished, Anil Roberts ended on the score, "Long live live sport." Remember that? That is the same Mrs. Prasad Bissessa, who is today obsessed by other motions of censure. But let me draw your attention to what is really going on. See this document? This is called the Social Sector Investment Program, 2014. Can you read that? The Social Sector Investment Program, 2014. Before I go into it, let me just remind you that for the first time after the last budget last October, under the new parliamentary arrangements that came into being only because the opposition PNM voted with the government, we were able to bring those new arrangements in place. Before that, when the PNM tried to bring them in place, the opposition UNC wouldn't vote for it, so it couldn't come into place. But as a responsible opposition, we voted with the government to bring them into place. So last budget, for the first time, the opposition leader sat down in the parliament and went through the budget line by line and called all ministers to come and account for the money that they were asking the parliament to approve. You remember that? Took us 3 or 4 days. And during that exercise, there were a number of instances where I could have pointed out, or my colleagues pointed out, that what they were appropriating was either too much or too little. And in many instances, they could not explain why they were asking and getting the kinds of money they were getting in the various heads and subheads. So, when it came to vote, after all those interventions and queries on those numbers, the government did not change a dollar. They did not change a dollar. Exactly what the Minister of Finance laid in front of the Parliament. After that exercise of 4 days of line-by-line examination, they used their majority and they voted the budget into place without a single comma change, not a dot removed, not a T uncrossed. Let me show you the result of that. This document, Social Sector Investment Program 2014. And on the cover, at the bottom here, it says poverty reduction. Poverty reduction. Bear that in mind. This other document is a United Nations Development Assistance Framework. 2014, the Biennial Rolling Plan, Trinidad and Tobago. In this document, on page 12, it says, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has adopted a target to reduce poverty by 2% per annum. The most recent data indicates poverty levels of 16.7% in 2005 and 14.8% by 2009. What this means is that people who are deemed to be under the poverty line and require assistance make up about 15%. Lo and behold, In this document, which is the government's own document, it says, and I quote here from page 51, the Central Statistical Office, based on the analysis of 2008-2009 Household Budgetary Survey in 2012, reported a poverty rate of 14.8%. So according to the government's own documents and the UN's understanding of the government's position, we have a 15% poverty level in this country, and the government's target is to bring it down by 2% per year. That being the case, as part of the poverty reduction program, we get up one morning and we hear that the Prime Minister is giving baby milk. It is called relief under privileged newborn. Relief under privileged newborn. Now, therefore, the people who are targeted for that baby milk, that baby grant, underprivileged newborn, 15% poverty level. And if one then put the two together, it means that about 15% of the babies born in this country would qualify for being underprivileged newborn, because the poverty level in the country is about 15%. Let us double that and say underprivileged mothers are making more babies than privileged mothers, twice as many babies. Then it means that those will represent 30%. The government is giving you $500 a month in that baby milk. If you are giving me $500 per month, that is $6,000 for the year. Let me repeat that. You're giving me $500 a month, $6,000 a year. If, let us say, what? Let us say 20% of the babies qualify, because the poverty level is 15%. Let us say 20% qualify. What is 20% of 20,000? 4,000? Okay. So 4,000 babies will qualify. And if 4,000 babies qualify, and it's only $6,000 per baby, Malcolm Jones, what is the total figure required for that project? That is $24 million. 6,000 by 24, right? You know how much money they budgeted for that program? A program that should really, at best, only be using $20 million. Do you know how much money was budgeted for that program? $120 million. That means they are catering, according to them, that every single baby in the country would qualify for a $6,000 baby milk grant. But the program is for underprivileged newborn. That should only cover 15% or so of the newborns. The number of newborns in this country per year is approximately 20,000. In fact, it is just below 20,000. So the amount of money they budgeted for the babies is for all the babies in the country. And let me tell you what's happening there. So 20 million would be used on those who qualify. The rest of it will be used on those who don't qualify. and those who are in campaigning mode. So you now go to a UNC meeting, and they are inviting you in UNC meetings now to get baby milk grant. You saw the lady on television who said, when they asked her how did she qualify to apply, she said she went to a UNC meeting and she was asked to come down to the Prime Minister's house to get baby milk. So the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who has an issue with paying members of parliament full time that may cost an extra $2 or $3 million or thereabouts, has no problem with a budget that has $100 million in extra for baby milk. And I can tell you, it is the same thing with the food card. Or worse, today, food cards are in fact cash on plastic. A food card is cash. All Tom, Dick, and Harry, from the Attorney General down, I'm being told, the Member of Parliament for the Martin Northeast pointed out that the Attorney General was giving out food cards in the Martin Northeast. Everybody who is anybody in this government giving out food cards is cash. It should only go to those who qualify by virtue of certain circumstance. I have come across people with university degrees and gainfully employed who buy their groceries from food cards because they know somebody in the food card office. When they went to campaign in Tobago, they carried a carload of food cards and supplied it to all those they felt they could have influenced to vote. And all the workers who they brought from Trinidad, they gave them their sustenance by food card. And where is the parliament in all of this? Blissfully asleep, while hundreds of millions of dollars being spent like that, corrupting the public service, corrupting the society, corrupting the incorruptible. And that is why they don't want the changes that I am proposing to make. But I'll make those changes, so help me God. And I'm not a stranger to changes. I'm not a stranger to change. And I'm not afraid of consequences. There's no wrong way to do the right thing. And there's no right way to do the wrong thing. When I was a member of the P&M cabinet, I saw the need for change. When Udicott was drifting astray and posing a threat to the government and the treasury and the public interest, I had no difficulty in standing up in the cabinet and telling the cabinet, this can't go on. I offended my colleagues. I got fired in the process, but so be it. When I became leader of the P&M, it fell to me to make the necessary changes in the party. And we embarked upon a year and a half of consultation in the party with a view of changing our constitution to make it more effective, fairer, and more democratic. And among the things we did, we removed the political leader's veto. Today, all Tom, Dick, and Harry, some of them, if you put P&M in a bread and make a sandwich, they don't want it. But they want to comment on P&M internal affairs. We're screening our candidates. Some of the commentators, in fact, we screened last night. Was it last night? We screened last night. We took a certain decision in Chaguanas East not to select a candidate because we couldn't agree on a candidate. By the time I reached home, on the front page of a newspaper is that we had selected somebody that caused a walkout. But that's news for some people. But the bottom line is, it's not news for the P&M. Not news for the P&M. We made the changes we had to make. And some of those changes were quite far-reaching. One of them was to elect the national executive of the PNM by one man, one vote. There were experts who told me I could never bring the PNM to a position to accept one man, one vote. There were experts in the PNM who told me that the delegate system would never be given up by party members. But after the period of consultation and explaining the value of what we were doing, on the day when we went to the special convention in St. Augustine Senior Secondary, there were only 3 or 4 votes against the one man, one vote. And I went further. Having been in office in such a way that I could have remained in office until 2017. Because 2015, general election, no elections in the party. 2016, local government election, no elections in the party. All office holders stay in place. So the next election that was due was 2017. And if I was in love with office and not afraid to lose office, all I had to do was to sit there until 2017. I told the party 1 year before the general election, which I always felt that they would hold on by the skin of the teeth until the very last day. I told the PNM 1 year before the general election, I will vacate my office and make the position of political leader vacant. And you, the members, by the one man, one vote method, you will choose a leader for the PNM to go into the general election. I was advised not to do that because this one was more popular and that one was more popular and this. I said, well, if there is anybody who gets elected after I've offered myself, that person has my fullest support because I will be supporting the new PNM leader. And we had a contest. We had a brilliant contest in the party. And your humble servant walked away with 93% of party member support. That doesn't prevent some PNM haters and some PNM ill-informed from questioning who is the PNM leader and when he will be removed. 93% of the votes. Those are internal party changes. And what I'm proposing now are the equivalent kinds of changes at the level of the national community, at the level of the parliament, involving the people of Trinidad and Tobago's resources. The parliament has to be brought up to speed to protect your billions of dollars. So, information comes to me as opposition leader. I wouldn't go into email gate tonight. I want a whole night for that. Because I understand that the Prime Minister came down somewhere and holding up folders that she has confirmations about email gate being a fake. I don't know why she took so long to come there. The Commissioner of Police said a long time ago that emails are fake. The Commissioner of Police of Trinidad and Tobago is quoted in the Express as saying that they are fake. I don't know why the Prime Minister takes so long to come with her files to say that they ain't good. But I want that debate, you know. I want that debate. Because what Senator Rowley didn't tell you tonight, that the journalist who was being threatened, the reason why that journalist was being threatened is because the government had got wind of a story that the journalist was about to publish. And they wanted the story killed. Because the story was explaining what happened with Section 34. So anytime they want the Section 34 debate, I'm ready for it. Because it will simply remind us of the days we walked around the savannah in our tens of thousands to tell the president that there may be criminal conduct in the corridors of power in Trinidad and Tobago. So anytime they want it, bring it on. In the meantime, as opposition leader, I had to sit here and watch the government attempting to sell shares in FCB. We in the PNM, we sold Pipdeco shares, no scandal. We sold NFM shares, no scandal. So therefore the country, the cabinet, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the public service, had an experience or had experiences in how to convert public shares into private shares. So we didn't expect any problem at FCB until somebody dropped on my desk FCB's annual report with a dog tag on a particular page. When I opened the page, I saw major managers in FCB with huge blocks of shares. And automatically, I had to ask, how did this happen? Because the public had oversubscribed the issue by 3.5 times. So how did these officers end up with these blocks of shares? And what wasn't there was the biggest block that was hidden because it was sold before the reporting period. And of course, as opposition leader, I made a public demand that FCB has questions to answer. And from that public demand, the first reaction from FCB was that we checked everything and everything was all right. And the Minister of Finance said, I am happy that everything is all right. And as the papers kept prodding, and we kept asking, we want explanations for that, the end result was a major scandal emerged out of FCB, resulting in the entire board being removed, criminal investigations, independent senator resigning, SEC doing investigation, and as I speak to you now, it is possible that persons could face criminal charges in that matter because there was a major scandal involving insider trading. And then something falls on my desk, a very legal document, but it's unsigned. Unsigned. But in the document, certain specific allegations are made against the current Minister of Finance. And the Prime Minister is of the view that as opposition leader, seeing what happened in FCB, knowing that there are other documents that confirm what is in the unsigned document, that I should not bring that to the Parliament. But I didn't bring it to the Parliament first, you know. I take my time. I take my time. I was coached by a Bajan coach called Mr. Gill. And Mr. Gill always advised us, get your first 10 runs in front the wicket. Play straight up and down. No hook, no pull, no leg lance, no square cut, no sweep. Play up and down. That's how I was coached. So, I called a press conference in my office outside the Parliament in December. And I asked Mr. Hawaii, if what is in this document where it says that you bought certain shares on a particular day, when shares ought not to have been bought by people like you, did you or did you not do that? He never answered. We went to Christmas. I came back in January. I called a second press conference and I raised the matter again with Mr. Hawaii. Did you or did you not do that? He never answered. I said, well, in this case, I'm going to come to the Parliament and file a motion of censure. Because if you are the Minister of Finance who oversaw this scandal in FCB, tried to bamboozle us that all was well, and you now want to go and sell shares in Phoenix Park, $2 billion worth, I have a problem with you. So I came to the Parliament and I filed a motion of censure to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago from people who wouldn't answer questions. And in there, I said to the Parliament, this document is unsigned. But in the document, it makes reference to other documents which are signed. And therefore, I am putting questions to the Minister of Finance. And the singular question which I'm putting to him again tonight because the man would not answer if you beg him. Did you or did you not buy TCL shares at the time as alleged in those documents? What is so hard in answering that? And he has a duty to answer because he is now in charge of the treasury. He is the corporation's soul. He is managing hundreds of billions of our dollars in shares and other assets, and he must answer. So what happens? So I get up and I made the case. And I pointed out why the motion is there and why he must answer. He got up to answer, and he go all over the world. I wrote Mr. X, and Mr. X said he don't know about it. I wrote Mr. Y said he didn't know about it. I wrote Mr. Z, and all of his defense is about other people telling him something. But he is not telling us the singular answer to the singular question, did you or did you not take part in trading, insider trading? That's the allegation. The minute the man sat down, up jumps the Prime Minister. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, SC. I wonder what SC means. Up jumps the Prime Minister. On cue, where Mark's smile reached my ears. In grabs the Speaker. The Speaker is telling us in the House, we who represent you, the people, I represent the people of Diego Martin West. From Carnage to Bagatelle, from Westmoreland to Corvin, I am in the Parliament to see for these little people who don't even know what shares are. They don't know what insider trading is. They don't know how many billions of dollars involved. But I know, and if I know, then they must know because I represent them. But the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who has led the most scandalous arrangements in this country, the most corrupt government in this country, jumps up and attempts to end the Parliament proceedings on Mr. Hawaii's defense. She wants to move a motion of privilege. And the Speaker was quite willing to allow it. But we of the PNM, we said we will have none of it. And if we had to shout him down on that day, we would have shouted him down because a travesty was about to take place in the Parliament. First, the man wouldn't answer. And now the Prime Minister, who should be concerned, any Prime Minister, having a minister in the cabinet with those kind of questions to answer, is given the opportunity to answer, and he's not answering, the Prime Minister should be concerned about him. No, but she's the defender. The same way she defended Arnold Roberts with Room 201, and in Live Sport, and Adam Ram-Logan, she's now defending Larry Hawaii. To the extent where, by prior arrangement, the Speaker knows that she has a privileged motion to bring. And of course, this SC is telling you, if you go to court and a witness comes in and gives this glowing testimony that make the case look completely won or lost, as the case might be, the matter ends there. Say, no, ma'am. It doesn't matter what the testimony is. It doesn't matter how good it sounds. Until it is subjected to cross-examination, you don't know the end of it. And then Colum Imbert stood up and did the cross-examination of Larry Hawaii's defense. And all hell break loose. Because he had the signed document from the SEC. And let me read something for you all. Let me tell you the root of all of this. In today's papers, after the Prime Minister attempted to end the motion, accusing me of all manner of evil, in today's Express, on the front page of the Express, they are quoting a document that came signed from TCL, where the TCL board was complaining to the Securities and Exchange Commission that persons in well-heeled position attempted to trade illegally in TCL shares. And here what the summary is. The summary of that document, printed in bold at the top of the complaint, signed by Mr. Nobby of TCL, said this to the SEC. Serious questions arise as to the integrity of the securities market being severely compromised by abuses from significant evidence of insider trading. I want to repeat that. Serious questions arise as to the integrity of the securities market being severely compromised by abuses from significant evidence of insider trading. That is the summary of the complaint to the SEC. And in that complaint, among the persons named as having questions to answer is the man who is today the Minister of Finance. And when this comes to my attention and I bring it to the Parliament, the Prime Minister attempts to stop the debate, the Speaker attempts to help her to stop the debate, and then when the motion was adjourned, it's not even finished, the motion is adjourned. The Prime Minister of our country, for heaven's sake, she has now moved a motion to send me to the Privilege Committee. Let me explain something to you all. If a matter goes to the Privilege Committee and the Parliament comes to an end, the matter dies. Ask yourself, what kind of kangaroo court they have in mind for this matter not to die when the Parliament ends in a few weeks' time? But look at the Prime Minister's, she's frantic, she's exasperated, she's urgent. It must be done now because get Rowley at all costs. Vanilla fail, Kamla will not fail. So I am now to be sent to the Privilege Committee because I make all kinds of allegations against Larry Hawaii. Prime Minister, I am not the one who make the allegations. The allegations are in the documents. I simply have brought it to the Parliament for an answer. And I'll tell you more than that, Prime Minister. If he was not the Minister of Finance, I wouldn't give two hoots about him or his behavior. That would have been for somebody else. But because he is the Minister of Finance of Trinidad and Tobago, unlike anybody else, and because I am the opposition leader, I am duty-bound to raise this matter on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the little people of Trinidad and Tobago who have been abused by people like that. Because in this country, every day it gets worse and worse. That the law applies to the little man, but the big man, the law, he's above the law. And it's a dangerous development in any country when the law is being applied preferentially. A little man from Laventil or St. Margaret village, he runs afoul of the law and he gets the book thrown at him. But if you're too big, like the big banks on Wall Street, you're too big to fail. We have to say no to that. So I go to Parliament on Friday, and I'm asking you all to tune in your television stations to watch the Speaker in his face and watch the ruling he's going to make. Because whether he says I have to go to the Privilege Committee or not, whatever they throw at me, I'm ready, willing, and able to deal with it. And as a matter of fact, since they so want Privilege Committee, I am hoping that he sends me to the Privilege Committee, because one of the things that I will do there is to call the Minister of Finance as a witness, and I'll get to question him there again. If he wouldn't answer inside the Parliament, come and answer in the committee. And the same way the vanilla rape backfire on them, this one going to back cannon on them too. You see, there are people in office in Trinidad and Tobago today who are no different to the people on Upper Frederick Street or Carrera. No different. The Prime Minister is not concerned that her beloved Attorney General is out of office and sitting down talking to the police on a daily basis. That is not a campaign issue. But the campaign issue is Rowley. It's Rowley. You understand? And of course, she is not sufficient, she's not content with that, the motion of privilege. She is now going to file a motion of censure on a matter which is being investigated for almost 2 years. She is the one who sent it to the police. I was saying, send it to the Integrity Commission. She was saying, no, the police. It went to the police. Almost 2 years now, it's being investigated. And even before the police could report to say yea or nay, you have the obscenity of the Prime Minister taking a position on the matter and coming to Parliament to move a motion of censure. And the motion of censure carries with it an attempt to suspend me. Well, I'm putting you all on notice now. That Parliament, that lame duck Parliament is now operating as a UNC campaign platform. They are conducting the election campaign in there. And since that is so, I don't have to be in there. I am conducting my campaign for the PNM out here. I don't have to go in there to spell the stench of what's going on in there now. But I'll simply tell you this. The last time the UNC suspended me from the Parliament, as they did before, it was precisely in a similar situation. I was making allegations and prosecuting on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago on the Piarco airport matter. And the UNC suspended me indefinitely. And at the end of the day, half of them went to jail, and the other half was fighting not to go to jail. But I was suspended indefinitely, and she has the unmitigated gall to come here in the face of this, with a Minister of Finance with serious questions to answer, who is about to carry out an IPO of $1.8 billion in an NGC subsidiary, and we must do nothing about that. Accept them. Make a mess of the IPO at FCB, and then coming to tell us in the Parliament as though we are kindergarten children how much money the bank make and how much this the bank do. That is not relevant to your situation. It matters not how much money the bank made. As a matter of fact, if the bank is so good, I and the rest of the PNM cabinet who created the bank then give us a little bit of credit because we created that bank. And if today the bank is the biggest resource in the financial sector for the government, it was a PNM decision without their support. And I'm asking you questions about your own personal private conduct which conflicts with public interest, and you wouldn't answer. And your defense is how much money the bank make. Get $12 million to leave your job to go to work for the Prime Minister and telling me I should be happy with that because I got a deal. Somebody else had offered him more. I mean, these people are so ridiculous. We filed a question to the Minister of Energy asking him, how much money are you paying this new chief financial officer at Petrotrin? He had to come to Parliament and answer it after they hide and duck and hide. He eventually came. And he said the man was getting, his basic salary was $162,000 a month. No problem. But then he immediately explained that that is the kind of salary you have to pay to somebody like that in the energy sector. But he didn't stop there, you know. He went on to say Don't think it's high. Malcolm Jones was getting more than that. Now, this is our Minister of Energy. In order to justify what they had done in paying a man $162,000 a month as chief financial officer, Malcolm Jones was the executive chairman. He was chairman of the board, and he was the top of the management at the same time in Petrotrin. And he was getting far less than that. So the minister came to the parliament and just plain and simple lied. So I've gone to the parliament and I asked for him on this documentation to be sent to the privilege committee. Tune into your television station on Friday and see what the speaker says. He has two decisions to make. He has to send me to the privilege committee because I dare to raise questions about Mr. Hawaii that he can't answer. And I told him that the Minister of Energy lied. I want to see what the ruling is going to be. Fun and games on Friday. Fun and games on Friday. But that is what the parliament has become. And I'm telling you now, until the parliament dissolves itself on June 17th, you'll get more and more of that foolishness. More and more of those lies. More and more of a prime minister who is totally out of control and is in full panic mode. And I now feel, for the first time, I feel endangered in Trinidad and Tobago. For the first time, I feel endangered as a public official in this country. For the first time as a politician, I feel endangered. Because the Prime Minister wants me out of the way so bad that she could do anything to get me out of the way. Because it is clear that the Prime Minister is of the view that the one thing she does not want and cannot countenance is to go into a general election with Keith Rowley as leader of the PNM and opposition leader. So for the first time, I feel concerned about my public safety in Trinidad and Tobago. So desperate are they. But I'm a child of God, in the service of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And these matters are in your hands. And as long as I've taken that oath of office as I've done, to act without fear or favor, malice or ill will, the job that I do today will be done to the best of my ability. So as we go forward, they could not call the election if they wish. The time is drawing nigh. The election is now going to call them. If they had half a chance, they will have no election, as they have done in their own party. They got into office in their party, and they decide, election. Khadija Amin, the party vice chairman, says, nobody is clamoring for election. So if you all were not clamoring for general election, Khadija Amin could easily have said, there should be no election in Trinidad and Tobago because nobody is clamoring for it. But our constitution was well written. After the 17th of June, the election would have called them. Because jump high, jump low. And I'm stopping right there. Once the election has not been called by the 17th of June, the parliament stands dissolved as per the order of the Constitution. And then the election will be due by the Constitution no earlier than the middle of July. Because she cannot, once it is dissolved like that, it cannot be called within 35 days. whether she wants to call it or not. And then after that 35 days, it can be called any time, but not later than the middle of September, which is the 90-day period after the parliament has been dissolved. So in which case, they would have expired their time. They would not have called the election. The election would have called them. And you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, would be answering loud and clear. And the instruction is, get out of there. Simple as that. I warn them, do not fall in love with office. If you fall in love with office, you will behave like you're mad when you're about to lose office. Haven't you seen that? Haven't you seen that? Have you seen the polls? After all they've said about Rowley, the poll came out and said, I'm still there. And I'm not only there, but I'm ahead of you. You could imagine the panic, and desperate people do desperate things. That's where we are today. Tonight, Pointe-a-Pierre, I want to commend to you once again the excellent candidate that the PNM has offered to you, Neil Mohammed. And Neil is not a one-man show. Neil is part of a new team, a new breed of PNM representatives, answering the call that I have made to the young people of this country. Young people of Trinidad and Tobago, come forward and take responsibility for this country. So tonight, in this room, I can point to 3 persons who've answered that call. Faris Al-Rawi, San Fernando West. Neil Mohammed, Pointe-a-Pierre. And Randall Mitchell of San Fernando East. And I have Terry Jadlanan, our man from Orapooch. I don't know where his red shirt is tonight. I almost missed him. And Terry has given the PNM the assurance that Moonilal is in danger. So, here in this room tonight, you have 4 of our youngsters. Well, Faris has a little bit of experience. But we have 3 brand new people starting their careers in public life. And I say to them tonight, public life is rewarding. A lot of people in this country are depending on these young people. Let not your heart be troubled. We of the PNM, we know wrong from right. Our party is 60 years old. And in our 60th year, we'll celebrate the finest victory of the PNM in this century when we stand on election night and bring them home in San Fernando, in Diego Martin, in Tobago, in Pointe-a-Pierre, in Chaguanas, in Sandy Grande, and we say, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail. May God bless us all. May God continue to bless Trinidad and Tobago.